Hey there, and welcome to this week's Music Careers Study Group, where we're live. We're here to gather with the musician community to discuss music marketing, promotion, and all of that. It's a study group, so we want you to feel welcome, to settle in, to join us, and to join in on the conversation. Today, we have a really great, fun, but informative conversation. In honor of Halloween, we're doing musician horror stories, because you cannot be a musician and not have plenty of horror stories to go around. Am I right, Chris?
You're right. And I'm not ignoring you. I'm just sharing our live stream.
I know what you're doing. I was frantically doing it before, as it faded.
Yeah.
And we've got Malia watching from Pasadena. Hello, Malia.
Hey there.
Yeah. So if you are just joining us, welcome. Say hi in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. And we're going to have a good time today, because if you have been a musician long enough and pursued a music career long enough, you've had some stuff happen to you. Some good.
I think that's bad. True, whether it's 20 years or like 3 months. There's mishaps all over.
I know. So we're going to dive into our list of musician horror stories today. But before that, Chris, how you been doing?
I've been great. And, not to make this all about me, but I've been super excited to do my own music live stream again. I took like a 4-year break. I got it up and running again. And one of the things I did for today's Halloween themed broadcast was these ridiculous graphics. So I'm like, hey, well, I should bring these to the Reverb Nation one.
Music Wait, how did you make those? Did you just do them in Canva?
I made them in Canva, meaning Canva made them, and I just removed the backgrounds.
Oh, nice. Easy. Yeah, you'll at one of our future music career study groups, you'll have to give us a breakdown on the live stream, like what your setup and all that, because that's one of those things that, before the pandemic, lots of people were doing here and there, but then everybody dove in on live streaming, and then it went away. Like the last year and a half, I'm like, nobody live streams anymore. 2 years. It's been.
I like to be like either way ahead or way behind trends. So that's why I left it alone since COVID. And then it's like, okay, now I'll come back. Now that no one's doing it. Hey, Aaron, how's it going?
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Aaron. Yeah, it's one of those things that, I like to, when everyone is hot on a band or an artist, I like diving in like 5 years later when they've proven that they've got a decent catalog, so I can get more of the story all at once. It's like binging a show.
Well, then you're not being susceptible to just hype. It's like, no, they're still around.
Yeah.
We're good, Aaron.
I'm sorry. We pushed the button at the same time, Chris. Again, this is the Music Career Study Group. Today, we're talking about musician horror stories. We're going to have a lot of fun, but it's going to be informative as well, because these are things that Chris and I have either done ourselves, but through our years working in the industry, we've worked with thousands and thousands of artists. And some of these are just things that either artists do that trip themselves up over and over again and cause big problems, or they're just things you're going to experience no matter what. That's how music is. And we're going to help you get through it. We're going to laugh. We're going to cry. We're just going to have a good time. It's Halloween. I'm not hopped up on candy yet, but
not yet. That's what tomorrow's for.
Tomorrow's for the sugar hangover. Like, oh, what did I do to myself? I'm having a dance party tonight in my garage, Chris. It's going to be amazing. So I was out there. Aaron, will try not to make you cry. I was out there fine tuning the lights. I've got a DJ board now, and it's going to be a great time. So
you always show good Instagram stories of those parties afterwards.
Yeah. Well, let's dive in. Again, if you're just joining us, feel free to weigh in on the comments, ask questions, let us know where you're watching from, say hi, and we're gonna get going. So, Chris, why don't you lead us off with number one? I don't know if these are in any particular order.
I don't think so.
But number one might be the number one.
All right. This is a horror story we see happen all the time. You set an arbitrary release date for your album or your single or your EP or whatever it is. That becomes the driving factor behind everything else. And you've missed your marketing window, you've missed other opportunities, or you didn't leave ample time to prepare to take advantage of all the things you could have done. If you'd simply just switched your release date or just modified your timeline. Do you have more to say on this?
Yeah, this one has plagued me, but and finally the last release I did with my band, I said, no, we are not going to fall in this trap again. But you and I have worked in distribution for many, many years, and this is the number one thing that destroys, frankly, artists' releases, is that they have set some release date. Just usually it is tied to, or oftentimes I should say, tied to some good show that they have booked in the future. Like, oh, 5 months from now, we've got this show booked. It's a great gig. We think it'll be well attended. That'll be our release show. So that week's going to be our release week. And then that drives everything. And of course, recording is delayed. It takes longer. Oh, and then you got to master. Totally forgot about that. Then now you got to do all these other things. And then frantically, like literally 2 days before, trying to get it signed up with a distributor. And they just burned the entire promotion window. There's so many things that only exist that are free and easy tools out there, like Spotify for artists, that only exist in the pre-release phase leading up to the release. And they just burn right over that just for some arbitrary release date. And they're frantic, and then they're frustrated because the release didn't go as planned. I've heard that story so many times. And every time I'm like, look, why did we do this? I've done it in my own band. Like, why did we do this? And the last record, I finally said no, because we were in the middle of recording, and one of the band members wanted to announce a release date. And I said, why? It's not done. We don't know when the release date is. We sometimes take forever getting these things done. Why were we going to make this arbitrary release date out there? Let's finish it and then set it up properly.
Well, and it's a weird time in music where, like, maybe in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, you needed this big window if you're going to have physical product and, ship it to stores and all this stuff. And then we kind of went to the opposite end of the spectrum where people got in this habit of just being like, I finished something, I want it out tomorrow. And so I don't think in either extremes we've developed like the habit of kind of responsibly, patiently waiting for the music to be done. And then, not sitting on it forever. But we don't realize, like, even your diehard fans, they don't need it to come out on Friday the 24th. Like, yes, they want your music, but it doesn't need it to be like some very specific day. So there's no rush in a way. And I feel like we do that sometimes because it's like, let's set a release date so we have the motivation to get it done, because artists also can just linger. And anyway, so just wait till your damn music's finished.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I've seen so many people just like freak out, lose their mind that week because they of a date that they set for no apparent reason.
Malia has a horror story that comes very close to our number 2. My horror story is recording this past summer, and I didn't have my DAW set up correctly, so I had to redo an entire day of recording, then walking out to my car with a flat tire. That sounds like an awful day. It's very close to what our number 2 horror story, which is just not backing up your hard drive or letting things that are on old hard drives kind of age. And then when you 15 years later, you plug that hard drive in, it doesn't work. You haven't put files into something like Google Drive or Dropbox, or if you had things on analog tape, that eventually tape sort of, what does it do? It flakes away, it deteriorates. So basically, and then lo and behold, you've lost your session, which is what happened here in a different way.
I think this is the bane of modern society, is that we have all these digital things now, and no one is backing things up. And even when they are, look, you can't see this on camera, but I've got a bunch of hard drives sitting right here on my desk. This one is a replacement for my hard drive was sitting right here that had all my files on it. Most of them were backed up, but a good chunk of all the promotion materials and sessions from our last record was not. I just bumped it off the desk. It fell, I don't know, 4 feet, broke the hard drive, and I went through the process to get it recovered. It cost me $1,200.
Oh God.
And that was after they wanted me to pay $2,500. And I said, never mind, not worth it.
For a hard drive that's how old?
It was probably like 4 years old,
Mhm.
because I'm pretty good about like transferring stuff, but it's like that redundancy. You got to have, the engineer we tend to work with for my band, Small Town Poets. He typically says if it doesn't exist in 3 places, it doesn't exist.
Mm.
So now I've got 2 drives that I'm trying to keep matched. It's still a challenge because we're making so much files. I mean, like, think about all the photos people take.
Yeah, well, Aaron's saying that right now. He's got a
Yeah.
strategy for redundancy. So,
Aaron, you should help us write an article about that, because that's something that musicians are not properly managing. And it's one of those things that no one's properly managing, but at least we can get the info out there.
You know, and I'm realizing one thing that I'm guilty of myself is that I have this sort of false sense of security. Like, once I've distributed it, oh, it's up on Spotify, it's everywhere. I need to worry less about having the raw files. But, you know, I might want to do something else with those files down the line. And suddenly, like, I'm not going to go, you know, rely on some compressed recording that's up in the cloud somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's one of those things that it's really important. So for my horror story where the drive busted, I'm like, part of the reason why I went through the process was just so when could let artists know this is what happens and this is how much it's going to cost you. And the company, first of all, it felt like a lot of the companies, their websites seemed super sketchy. So I had to do a lot of research to make sure that this was legit. So then when I declined their like $2,500 price point, they came back at $1,200. I'm like, oh, but I don't know what's on it. That was the other thing. I wasn't 100% sure what I didn't have. And I'm so glad I did it, because I had a lot of my sessions with my guitar work and all my promotional materials and a lot of stuff that for our last record that I was trying. That's how I was in the process of trying to access that when I knocked the drive off and broke it. And anyway, it was worth getting it back just for the peace of mind of knowing that some of the cool stuff I did for promoting that album was not lost.
Yeah. This is also similar in some way to our third horror story, which is relying so heavily on a particular piece of gear for your live performance. I guess it could be for anything in your music career, but I was thinking some piece of your live show that is so indispensable to you that when it breaks, you can't perform. And like, don't do this. I know it's probably easier for me to say as someone who can always pick up an acoustic guitar and still play a show, as opposed to something that's very electronic, computer driven, whatever. But stuff breaks. As we're saying, hard drives break, computers break, synthesizers break, guitar cables break, guitar effects pedals break. And it's a lot to say, hey, that $2,000 piece of gear, you should have 2 of them as a backup. But I'm not even suggesting that. I'm like, is there a way you can still deliver a decent show by working around that if it breaks and you have to spend 4 days or a week replacing it?
Oh man, I've got a story for you on that. But first off, we've had a lot of people just join in. You're watching the Music Career Study Group. Say hi in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. We're talking musician horror stories in honor of Halloween. Chris, can I get some ghosts?
Ooh.
Oh, there we go. In honor of Halloween. So if you've got a horror story, weigh in. Malia already shared a great one. That sounds like a really bad day. but yeah, we're going down our list. So share yours and we'll get it on the show. So related to what you just said, Chris, having backups, you know, there was this show we did and we played with some tracks first. And a lot of times it's like probably like 50-50 that we just use Ableton for the click and guides. And then we use about 50% of the songs probably have some tracks, you know, just some added percussion and synths and things. And we were about to take the stage, like we'd sound checked, everything's great. We were just like, it was a smaller, intimate venue. It was packed. It was like more of like a coffee shop cafe thing, but they had a full stage. So we were doing like our full setup, but a little bit toned down. But we were still at the computer. We walked up, just to sort of tune 15 minutes before, and the computer that had been working perfectly all through our shows was completely dead, like dead. And no one knew why. Fortunately, we had an extra computer and we're able to, with Ableton and all the sessions on it, but it was just like there was no explanation. So it's not even like, oh, that piece of gear is dying. And if it's something that you rely on for your show, have an extra, have a contingency plan, because whatever can break will break.
Yeah.
And you mentioned guitar cables. It's like, it doesn't matter how fancy a guitar cables you buy, they will break.
Yep.
And it'll be at the worst possible time. So
yeah.
And there's nothing worse than being in front of people who are expecting you to play, think you just took the stage to start playing, but you're sitting there like all down in there stressing out, and then you're all frazzled through your show, and it's just horrible.
Yep. Yeah, I think of like for my live stream that I do, the music live stream, I rely very heavily on this sort of multi-effects thing by TC Helicon. And it's mostly reliable, but occasionally it's gotten glitchy on me. And I've had to do live streams with just sort of the computer audio, just computer mic, acoustic guitar. I don't love it. I feel slightly uncomfortable and sort of fish out of watery, but I can still do it. It's like I'm still delivering a show. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like the next one on the list is more of a mistake that we see artists doing and less of a horror story of something that happened to them. But why don't you dive into that one, Chris?
All right. So when you're on tour, are you actually on tour as if you want to be a successful musician, or are you treating it like vacation? I think tons of musicians treat tour like a vacation, and they don't really advance the shows to make sure what else is happening in that in that town that night. Is there competition? Have they marketed it properly? Is there anyone going to be there? Are they partying too much? Touring can be very fun. It's a lot of new adventure, new people. So your energy in that way, your social energy is up. But if you're partying and drinking every night, you're going to be exhausted and then get sick, and then you won't be able to do your show. There's just a lot of ways in which treating tour like a vacation is a horrible mistake.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned the partying aspect, which will wear you down real fast. But I tend to lean into like, are you treating it like a job? You said you want it to be a career. You're in a town that you're not from. Are you spending the day sightseeing? Are you spending the day lounging around? Or are you spending the day hustling, trying to get your music in front of everybody in that city as possible? This is one of the things that really broke our band, is that our manager had us busting our butt from morning till night. We've got known for doing these acoustic sets. We'd go to college student centers. We'd go to businesses. These were all prearranged. We weren't like flash mobbing people. They were all prearranged, but we were hustling. We'd go to radio stations that didn't even play our music, but because we'd play acoustically live on air, they'd be like, "Hell yeah, we'll have you guys come in. You're playing a show tonight." Sure. It wasn't even necessarily the right format. We were doing it from morning till sound check, then a break for dinner, the show, and then we'd be doing it after the show as well and driving. We were just exhausted. And one of the times I felt most seen, Chris, was I was watching Radiohead's
Meeting People Is Easy.
Meeting People Is Easy, and they're in the car, and Tom York it's like a picture of him. He's in the van or whatever, they're filming him, and they're driving through Berlin. And he's like, "This is one of the most amazing cities in the world." And he says, "But we won't see any bit of it because that's not why we're here." Mm-hmm. And that was like a big reminder to me, like, you're seeing the world and you want to go out and like just experience it all, but that's not why you're there. You're there to work. Yeah. You're there to get people turned on to your music and out to a show and to take advantage of the local press. And so I think that's one of the big mistakes that maybe you're between what you said, partying, and not treating it like a job, turn your tour into, instead of it being a successful event, turn it into a horror show. Because by the end, you're like, what did we even do? We're broke now. We can't.
Well, it's in a way, it seems like you're saying, in hindsight, your band did so much. You took advantage of so many opportunities to get your music in front of new people, and that was great. You hustled, you were treating it, but it almost seems like you're saying we did that too much and should
It
have
got to a point
backed
where,
off a little bit.
yeah, it got to a point where, this was early days of the web, but I remember, have you seen that episode of The Office where they give Creed a fake website because what he writes is
I think so, yeah.
I remember we were this, early days of the internet, we were sitting being interviewed by somebody, and this is after, we were nominated for a Grammy and had been selling well, and this person said their website name, and it was kind of a URL like that. It's www.this/this/that. I'm like, what are we doing? We've reached enough stature that we don't need to be doing this anymore. Because because you do have to take care of your health too. That's another thing, a part of it. You got to take care of yourself. Yeah. Hey, if you're just joining us, this is the Music Career Study Group. Weigh in or let us know where you're watching from. Say hi in the comments. And if you've got a horror story, music horror story, please share it with us. And yeah, we're just going to keep going down the list.
Yeah, the next one, I know we actually did an entire episode of our previous podcast about this, but it's when you've made a record or maybe you've made a song and you're really excited about it, and then the producer says, I own this, or I am cutting myself in on half of the songwriting credit, or something that just gets pulled out that doesn't seem quite right, wasn't agreed to beforehand, and now you're in a dispute of some kind.
Yes, this is something that I think if you've been doing music for a long time and you're familiar with the term producer, it has multiple meanings these days. And I think if you're not clear with an engineer / producer what the arrangement is, you can find yourself in big trouble. And we've seen that from a lot of artists where an engineer or producer holds their masters hostage, wants more money, says they own the sessions. That should never be the case unless you've agreed to that. So that is something that if you are working with somebody and you have not determined what's going to happen at the end of the session, you need to, because sometimes they will not turn over the files. And from their perspective, from the nefarious side, they're just trying to ensure that you have to use them again and pay them again. But that's not how it works.
Well, and this is different to, maybe this is obvious, but this is very different from you're in the midst of a recording project and there's an outstanding balance that you owe the engineer or the mixing engineer.
Correct. And they're pay your bills, people. Pay your bills.
Yeah, they're not going to hand over a finished session or the tracks or anything until they've been, at least up to date on the payments or something. But we're talking about when they really are like, we own this now, which happens more than you would expect. Maybe
there's a lot of predatory producers out there, and they tend to take advantage of younger artists. And they promise them a lot. And sometimes it comes in a package, like we're going to make the music and give you a video. And it sounds, it's surface level, just like normal. But if you're not careful, you can find out that they're almost treating it like they're a label, even though you have no agreement with them.
Yep. Well, the next horror story I'm sure we can all relate to is simply suffering the consequences of procrastination. And I encountered this myself in the last 2 weeks. I have been helping a friend named Alice Howe run some ads, Facebook ads for a tour. And she had 3 new tour dates that she had a budget for. And she said, hey, can you help me set these up? I said, yes. Then I thought, well, I've got time. I'll wait a little bit. And I waited about 4 or 5 days past the point where I really should have started setting them up. Again, because like most things take time. Facebook needs to approve the ads, whatever. So eventually, last minute, I go in to create the ads for shows that are happening in like 4 days, 3, 4, 5 days away. And Facebook is glitching out Meta Ads Manager basically is not functioning. It won't let me approve ads. It won't let me associate the Facebook event with the ad. It won't let me associate it with the proper page. All these weird sort of internal connections that it needs and depends upon to run effective ads were all broken. And then I have no idea what caused it. Maybe it was just election season and holiday ads madness. But for whatever reason, I couldn't run her ads. I kind of left her a message and said, I'm so sorry. And actually I'm going out of town for the weekend. I can't investigate it anymore. Here's, you deal with it, like, here's this mess. You make sense of it, 'cause I'm gone. And she couldn't make sense of it. Anyways, there is a happy ending in this case, because on Monday morning when I came back, I set it up. It all worked fine. We had 2 days for the ads. It wasn't ideal. It worked. But in a lot of cases, just waiting that long to do what I should have done earlier would have cost her any ads and promotion for these shows at all. So it's my long-winded way of saying, don't wait.
Yeah, I think going back to like even the release date thing, where we were talking at the beginning about, setting an arbitrary release date and that driving everything, even though it becomes detrimental. I think in general, artists just don't leave themselves enough time for a lot of tasks, like reaching out to press, notifying their email list, activating their fans. Everything's waiting. And that's partly why it's like, hey, finish the music and then take a breath. Take a breath, because now you need to reset and you need to give yourself ample time to do all these things. Because most of the time we're making a timeline based on everything going perfectly. Which never happens.
Which happens never, right?
Yes. And so that's one of those things where like, hey, finish the music, take a break. But in your case, you were making ads for some shows. It's like, yeah, allow yourself extra time to be realistic and know that, we get ambitious. I know that's one of my problems is I get overly ambitious, and I'll be like, oh, I'm going to do these 1,000 things and I'm going to get them done. And then I end up chasing my tail and waiting too long. And, it's a mess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the solution is besides just better organization and project management of your own music activities, or in my case, an activity I was doing on behalf of another artist. It was almost worse if it was my own tour and I'm failing myself. That's one thing. But I was like, oh God, like she had a budget and I'm screwing this up just because I waited. It all worked out. But
we've got to have more musician horror stories for those of you watching.
So there's people watching.
Yeah, if you're watching, come on, share. You're in safe company. No one's gonna judge you. Say hi in the comments. Let us know where you're watching. And if we've all had horror stories, so we want to hear yours. It's Halloween, everybody. It's time to dish.
Yeah, and we will laugh with you, not
at you.
So don't worry. Let's see.
Miles just posted something funny.
Let's see.
I had my set interrupted, so the winners of the mullets and mustache probably so they could announce it. Could be announced. He added it in the next line. It's not. That's so funny.
Brilliant. Now, here's a question, Miles. Did you know when you accepted this gig that it was associated with the mullets and mustache competition?
You know what? That I was just talking to my daughters the other day about a show I had totally forgotten about. It was this festival show. It was a band I had here in the Portland area. We were playing this pretty sizable festival up in the Seattle area. And, it felt like a big upgrade for what we had been doing, like a good opportunity. And there was a nice audience. It was, an afternoon slot for a festival, but that's what we deserved at that point. We weren't the headliners by any stretch of the imagination, but there was a good audience. There was probably 200-300 people watching us on this big stage. And the promoter says, backstage, like in the green room, hey guys, right after your set, we're going to have all these skydivers jump out of planes and land on the field. So your set there we go. We've got skulls falling from the sky. They're like, you were hey Paul's joining us.
What's up, Paul?
We're gonna have all these skydivers jumping out, and it's timed. Like, we can't have them hold, they're jumping at this time. And so the band before us starts going a little longer, and it's a festival, so it's like the sound check is a line check before you go on. So it's not like we can just take the stage and start. So now I'm stressed the whole set, and it's like, there is no way. We're now where the skydivers are supposed to happen like 3/4 through our set, our allotted time, which was probably only 45 minutes. So we're playing, and the crowd was into it. They're right in front of us, but then we had to stop in the middle of our set. And the promoter comes out and says, now everybody, I thought the skydivers were going to be like right behind the crowd. Like, now everybody go over there for the skydivers. And the whole crowd just left. And the skydivers landed, and we were supposed to play 2 more songs, which we did. And it was the most pathetic thing ever, because they just directed everyone to leave, and nobody
to an
came
opposite
back.
side of the festival grounds.
Yes,
or whatever.
And nobody came back. And it was one of those where you're like, I feel, why did I become a musician? This is like the dumbest thing ever.
Let's see. Malia's my jeans split in the butt during my music theory lecture, so I sat at the piano and played for the duration. Good save. Great save. No, in fact, they interrupted me again later to announce the winner of the Mars.
If a little kind of a tie into what another tie into what Miles is talking about, our band has a song called There's Only You. The music video is of us playing a cakewalk. It's not a real cakewalk, it's staged, and it's quite hilarious. And it took me many years to pick all the cake residue out of my guitar that I was playing in the video. But it was based on a real story that happened to the director's friend's band, where they showed up to a gig and found out, they thought it was a regular gig, but they found out they were just music for a cakewalk, and they had to keep stopping to pick numbers and call out numbers so people could win their cake. And so the director always had that in the back of his mind. He's like, I need to, when there's the budget for it, I need to do a music video that's that very scenario. So that was a fun music video to make. It's on YouTube if you want to find it.
Here's one more quick pianist horror story. Malia went to a show, and the keyboard had 5 extra keys, so she didn't know where middle C was. That's a brutal lack of reference point.
Yeah, those Bosendorfers have extra keys on the low end.
Miles is saying there was a happy ending because the check cleared. That's great.
That's always the happy ending. Is that if the check cleared, then hey, it's all good. I'm up for another round.
I don't know if people are just joining or if Paul's still with us. Paul's a bass player in a band that tours quite a bit. What we're looking for today is your musician horror stories. It could be recording horror stories, live horror stories, interband drama, whatever it is. We've all been there, so we want to hear your terrifying tales of making music.
Yeah. And some of these are mistakes as well, but we'll keep going. So Chris, hit us.
What's next? Let's see.
This one's a big horror story happening to a lot of artists currently.
Buying fake streams or followers, whether you know you're doing it or not. So you've probably heard a lot of warnings about, hey, don't pay a service to have like a bot farm stream your song a bunch on all their fake devices and fraudulent accounts and stuff. But this is happening to artists who don't know they're doing that. They may hire a promotional service that just has some slightly unscrupulous stuff. And if Spotify, or many of the platforms, but particularly Spotify, catches these sorts of streams, not only will they not monetize them, but you run the risk of your music being removed altogether. So
yeah, don't do it. They are cracking down on fraud big time. And the side note horror story to that is that I've known lots of artists that haven't done any of these things, but their song was put in a playlist that somebody was driving a lot of fake streams to. So if you see a playlist with that where your music, it's like, wow, this one track is randomly really doing well in this playlist, and you look at the playlist and it's like, I don't understand the connection or why they picked it. You might be in a situation where someone has added your track to their playlist. What they do is they'll create a playlist, and like 25% of it will be their own tracks, but they fill it with legit artists in order to kind of obfuscate the fact that they're going to drive a bunch of fake traffic to it. And you've been hearing a lot about artists randomly having their tracks removed, and they're like, I didn't do anything. That's probably what happened to them. And that's something that I don't understand why Spotify isn't cracking down on, because they have the user information. They know.
Yeah, right. In other words, what you're saying is, why penalize the artists who've been placed on it when they didn't pay for unscrupulous practices? Instead, penalize the user, the individual listener account that posts such a playlist. Yeah.
Oh man, Ian just posted a good one.
All right, let's see. I was supposed to be doing a quick change behind the pipe and drape of a stage and tripped over something and fell half naked back onto the stage in front of a couple thousand people. Damn. That's a good one. You know, in the past couple weeks, I've seen footage of Billie Eilish and Olivia Rodrigo falling on their own
that Olivia Rodrigo
stuff.
one looked pretty scary. Like somebody really screwed up.
Yeah. It was like bad fall.
He got a big applause though, he said.
Nice. But I was going to say is, like, sometimes, or at least with Billie Eilish, I think she shared the footage. Like, you know, it's sort of like so embarrassing. Yeah. And today it's like, it's going to be out there anyways. So there was kind of a charming way in which she posted it, and was like, oof.
Yeah. Absolutely. If you're an artist and stuff like this happens to you and it's on video, absolutely share it, because there's nothing that I think it adds a level of humanity and just points out how ludicrous a music career is and just the stuff that you're dealing with. And if you put a funny spin on it, it just makes great content. Yeah, that Olivia Rodrigo one was pretty scary. Like,
yeah,
if you haven't seen it, it was like, you know, there's a trap door on the stage. I'm not sure if it was where she came up. You know, sometimes they have these elevators, and they go down quickly or up so they can get off the stage or make an appearance. And it was left open, and the stage was dark, and she's just walking, and bam, but she caught herself. I'm sure it didn't feel good, but fortunately she didn't get hurt much worse.
Yeah. Let's see what our next horror story is. Oh, this is a common one. Not understanding your business relationships. And so what this can lead to is you giving up too much power or ownership of or control over things that you really should maintain for your future success, or maybe just expecting, maybe you have bad assumptions about what a partnership means for you. You think a label is going to do more than they actually are signing up to do, or you think you get a manager, they're just going to like make you famous. And so you kind of stop doing the things that you should be doing in hopes that this person will solve your problems. In either of those events, it's a very bad outcome.
Yeah, I would say that I don't know. I'd estimate that probably 75% of artist label horror stories come from the fact that they didn't read the contract and they didn't understand the contract. And even if they did it anyway, thinking, oh, it'll be fine, because they just wanted that validation. They just wanted to say they were on a label. And then reality sets in that they entered into a business relationship that is a toxic relationship often. Not always. There's some good. In fact, there's better contracts now these days than there ever was. I've got the contract from my band in the drawer over there, and it is a horror show. If you want to talk about horror shows.
And like classic horror movies that are always worth watching once a year, you take your contract out every few months, right? And
I used it in a keynote I did a couple years back, and I read through it and I was like, we had lawyers look at this. How did they allow for this? But it was just standard. And there's only so many things you can argue as an unknown artist being signed for the first time. That's where artists have more leverage now because of social media and all that. You can build an audience and say, hey, I don't need you. You need me. You need an artist that has an audience and music that's already hitting. So you can take it to a new level. But, this was the era of, you needed a label to get your music out there and it needed to be on the radio. And so there was just so many concessions. And there's only, the lawyer could have kept going, but that just drives up the bill for us. It's not cheap. But understand the relationship you're getting into, because at the end of the day, your music and your catalog and how you manage it and own it, or maybe exchange ownership for something else, it's really important you understand the long-term impact of that, because most people think, oh, I won't care about this in 5 years. And then you're like, crap, why did I do that?
Yeah. Here, Miles has a minor horror story here. I had an older fan message me on Facebook that they were excited to see me at the fair that I wasn't playing at. Turns out Morgan Miles, who has been on The Voice, was playing, and I had to explain. Aw. Sad for you, sad for the fan.
Speaking of like that one about tripping and falling naked on the stage, I haven't had that experience, but we were playing a big festival once, and it was our first summer of playing major festivals. We were in the early afternoon slot. There was still thousands and thousands of people there, and at the big rock and roll ending, like the sun was beating down on the stage, and it weirdly had like this white plasticky type stage instead of black. It was at the Gorge Amphitheater here in Washington. And the big rock and roll ending, and I'm just, for the last song, and I totally slipped, totally biffed it, like face planted, tore my pants, my guitar's out of tune, but fortunately it was the last song, and I just picked up the guitar and banged on it, and then just went off the stage and cried.
You cried into the beautiful, beautiful view of
that helped. That helped. I'm like, figures,
That is an amazing venue.
It is an amazing venue.
This next one, I'm going to bring the ghosts up again because this is terrifying and common and so spooky. I do it all the time. I forget to budget properly for my recordings, for the time it takes to do anything. We sort of talked on this with the procrastination, but when it comes to money, artists are excited. They get a bit of money. It's enough to, get the recording going. So they get 2 days in the studio or a week or whatever it is, or they get it up to the point where it's ready for mixing. But, oh, look, all the money's gone. No time for that next step, or no money for the next step, whether it's finishing tracking, mixing, mastering. We always, max out the credit card and get the record done, but for mastering. And then there's just so many ways to think about this, like time as well. What was that one thing not budgeting enough time to like get the vinyl back and listen to the test pressing and make sure there's no errors, and like, so just budget money and time accordingly. Or if you don't do mistake number 1 or 2 and rush the thing. Just wait until it's finished and then make your plans for releasing it.
Yeah, we've seen this a lot. Almost all artists I talk to, not all of them, but almost, never think about mastering in the recording process and the money it's going to take. There are some really great online mastering tools where it usually averages out to be like $9 a song. That's more budget friendly. But it's one of those things that, scheduling to have it mixed usually goes longer than expected and more expensive, possibly, if you keep asking for more and more and more revisions. But then mastering is a whole nother thing, and budgeting for that and the time, because, you're dealing with other professionals that have only a certain available time. And it may be that they're booked out, and that mastering engineer you really want, or that mixing engineer you really want, is booked out, or more expensive, or they raised their rates. That's the other thing that we encountered recently when recording. The person we'd been using raised their rates. And we're like, we were kind of budgeting off of your old rates.
Happened to me too. And even the friend rate I was getting was like, it's
more expensive to be your friend now.
Inflation applies to the friend rate too.
It's true. That's true. Yeah, so that's one of those things like budgeting and budgeting for some marketing. Marketing is not free. There are a lot of things you can do if you don't have much resources on the marketing side, but there's so much you can do for a little amount of money if you just budget and set some aside for the marketing.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of just to restate that, but it is so common that we spend the money to finish the music and then nothing left for marketing. That is not what labels do. Labels may spend a boatload of money to make a record, but then they also spend a boatload on the marketing because they know that that's what drives sales. It drives concert ticket, all the things that need to happen. Streaming, it has directly to do with what they're willing to spend and do on the marketing side of things. So again, if you spend everything on your music and you have nothing left for marketing, wait to release until you've saved up some more money on the marketing side.
Yeah, there's no rush. The only exception as far as being no rush, seeing that we're coming up on the holiday season, is that which my band has multiple holiday releases, Christmas releases, and a couple of Christmas singles. There you do have a tight deadline, and if you miss the window, you got to wait another year, because dropping a Christmas track in January, not a good idea.
We've got an injury horror story. Speaking of face planting, luckily I avoided face planting while playing a concert on pipe organ by using my forearms to brace my fall, but ended up playing octave clusters at full volume. So this sounds terrifying for a few reasons. First, you're playing the pipe organ, which is very terrifying on its own.
Yeah. The whole town heard you fall that day. She followed up with saying, "This is what happens when you ask pianists to play pipe organ. They can't."
Let's see. What's our next horror story? Oh, this is one I don't know what the remedy is. I don't think this one has a remedy. We tried to be helpful and say horror stories and what you can do about it. But getting bad reviews, not a whole lot you can do except possibly learn from them if there's actual validity in the critique as opposed to just snarkiness and meanness.
Yeah, I think, it depends. I think snarkiness can be a win, because then you can post it on social media and get your fans to like get them riled up. Not against the writer. Don't do anything silly like that. Don't be abusive online. But the idea that you can use it as a rallying cry, like, no, you're amazing, and get your fans riled up. A band I had here in Portland called Hello Morning, one of the local weekly entertainment magazines, gave us a bad review because our guitars sounded too tuned and we sounded too professional. And I'm like,
how
what
dare you
on earth? How dare we tune our guitars and make a quality recording? And I was just like, I wish I had an image of my face when I read it, because I'm just like, did I just read what I thought I read? That our guitars, how do you have a guitar that's too tuned?
That is that speaks to a certain time and era of Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
At the time, everything was beards and banjos. If you didn't have bearded people and banjos in your band, they hated you.
Well, you did say don't retaliate, and that's important, because one of the horror stories that I think of a lot is a band. I think they were a band in Portland, Oregon, that kind of launched a retaliation campaign against maybe that magazine or maybe a different one. I forget which one it was. And it was bad. It was really bad for them. It looked desperate and hurt and sort of petty, as opposed to just sort of graciously taking the punch and being like, well, they didn't like us. All right, cool, move on. Because again, not everyone's music is for everyone. Most music isn't for everyone. So it's okay that people don't like you. And in some ways, getting press reviews is just like finding fans. It's a numbers game. Some outlets will hate you, some will love you. But yeah, that band, I can't even remember who they were now, but it was such a train wreck when they turned their audience against that writer.
Yeah, I remember that whole thing. That was an amazing meltdown to watch.
It was, yeah.
I remember us being in the office all talking about it, like, oh my gosh, just stop. You're not making it better.
Yeah.
Ian Campbell has another one. This one's pretty good. There's another Ian Campbell who plays folk Americana music about an hour and a half from me. I played a show one time where a bunch of people were actually there to see him.
Oh no.
And they said it was interesting job to turn them around. Ian, you two should get together and do a show together.
That's perfect. Oh yes. Co-bill.
Be like Ian Campbell versus Ian Campbell.
Yeah.
Or Ian Campbell squared.
Well, and same thing, Miles Morgan should play with Morgan Miles. See how that works. Speaking of that last cautionary tale about not retaliating because it was like a slow motion train wreck.
He said he definitely thought about that.
You should do it. Band drama. So I don't know how you sum up this one, but you know, you play with people for long enough. It's like any relationship. You develop annoyances or whatever. So this band drama. But when I wrote this down, what I was particularly thinking about is a show I played in LA where another band on the bill had a full-on meltdown on stage and then an even bigger meltdown off stage afterwards. It was embarrassing for everyone. It was awkward for everyone in the room. You could see this person, the singer, insulting the other players for what wasn't even really their fault. Like they weren't making mistakes, or it was like so weird. There's no way that this can go well for literally anyone. And then afterwards it was just a massive shouting match and breakup in the parking lot as we were just trying to like load our gear out next to them. So I don't know what the what to do about it is, but if you have band drama, try your best to not make it other people's problems outside of the band.
If you want to see some serious band drama on video from a band I was in, you could go to the Hello Morning YouTube page and see the other guitar player accidentally smack the lead singer over the head with a full swing of his guitar, cracked him over the head during our last song, and our lead singer drifted off the stage. And I walked off to the side room, and the way our lead singer went off the stage, there was no stairs into the backstage room on that side. You weren't supposed to exit the stage the way he did, but he just got clocked on the head, basically like getting hit with a baseball bat, but he got hit by the tuning peg. It's all on video and it's on YouTube.
Blood everywhere.
And that backstage room, I went in and the lights were out, and all I hear is Henry say, "Guys, I need some help." And I turned on the light and his face was just covered with blood. And the funny thing is the other band member was an EMT. I didn't help him. Didn't help him.
I think this story
was a sign that band wasn't going to last much longer.
This warrants all of the graphics we have. That story.
And it's all on YouTube. If you search Hello Morning Band, I think is what it is. It's from like 2012 or something. That band, we made some amazing music, but band drama, that'll end things real quick.
I remember that.
That was just the perfect encapsulation of some of, I think, some other issues that were maybe brewing that weren't
yeah.
But I just was like, and then he ended up having to get stitches, and I don't think we had many shows after that.
Or if you did, Henry, the singer maybe wanted to be on a different side of the stage.
Yeah, it's a sight to see. Anyway, yeah, band drama is tough. Like managing personalities, I think that's one of the things that when you start a music career, you might start collaborating with somebody, and hey, we've got some good energy. We've got some good, we collaborate really well, good creative juices flowing. We kind of complement each other. But then as time rolls on, it's really hard to like accept or deal with all the other stuff. Like you said, Chris, you're around somebody so much, and realizing that, you know, there may be a lot of other baggage that is coming into the situation that's outside of the music, even that you're like, I didn't want all this. So it can be really hard to manage that and deal with it. And a lot of horror stories can be that. Fortunately, the band I've been in for many, many years, Small Town Poets, we're just like too chill of guys to really have any sort of significant band drama. But when we were on tour, we'd hear from our friends and the bands we were playing with, how they would be like throwing punches on the bus every night. I'm like, how could you live that way? Like every night, like you're playing shows, your record's doing well, and then you're just so angry you got to throw punches at each other. It's like, wow.
It's like stories about the police, how they were always just having fist fights.
I hear the Eagles don't like each other either.
It's tough making all those tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in your life.
It's like life is so easy for you and you're more angry than ever.
Here's Miles. I was playing an open mic on the north side of Nashville in 2005. It was a startup coffee shop in a sketchy neighborhood. When I was on stage, I was distracted by multiple rats running along the wall. They might have been your fans. Did you get their email addresses?
Yeah, they tip. Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's funny what's happened to the north side of Nashville. That's where a lot of the clubs are now. It was not like that when I lived there.
In special honor of one of our, I think one of yours as well, favorite stories, when we first started our podcast that we formerly had many years ago, I don't even, what was it, 2006 or 7 or something?
Seven.
We had an early episode that was similar in nature to this. It was like sort of like, hey, call in with your embarrassing music stories. And there was one story, I probably mentioned it 100 times to people, but this guy played a show and he thought he was going to be a rock star. And on the downbeat of the first song, he was going to leap against the wall adjacent to the stage and kind of bounce off of it. Unfortunately for him, his foot went right through the drywall and he ended up getting stuck sideways in the wall.
Well, and it went all the way through the wall because it was just like a fake wall between the stage and the hallway to the bathroom. So he's like, he even had a picture of it. Like his foot went all the way through the wall and just looked like a giant idiot.
I'll never forget that story. When we talk about like embarrassing heart, I'm always like, that guy won a trophy in my mind.
So who wants to be a musician still? Raise your hand. No, these are the stories that keep you going because it's hilarious. Like the one that we didn't mention, it kind of goes with band drama because you said anything can happen. No matter what, no matter the age of your vehicle, how you're driving, how you're in transportation to your shows, you will break down. You just will. It'll happen. Something will happen causing you to break down, and it doesn't matter who you are. You even hear about this happening to the top of the top people, and their bus is breaking down. Someone gets in an accident. The roads are icy. Flights are delayed. All sorts of stuff. You're just going to deal with travel stress that can really unravel your day or your tour really quickly. It's happened so many times to me. And now it's just one of those things that thinking about it stresses me out. But when it happens, it's just kind of like, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna deal. And if we make it, we make it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think as an artist, when we talk about horror stories, so much of being a professional and being out on the road and playing shows, if you're playing shows or writing, recording, releasing music, is having the ability to manage this certain level of daily stress if you're out on tour, or just stress in the release process or promotion process, that understanding that there's going to be things that go wrong and you're going to face rejection and it's going to feel horrible, but you just got to understand that's just part of the gig and you got to just learn to deal with it. And I think the people that really shine through as professionals, usually have the mental ability to handle that. I noticed when we were playing shows, there was one year where we did like almost 200 shows. You get really good at playing your instrument. I was not thinking much about what I needed to play. It was usually what my brain was spending a lot of energy on was managing the mental stress that was happening in the show, bad monitors. There was a show where a kid was literally spitting on me down below right in front of me. And I had no idea. I'm like, what is this that just hit me in the face? And then I realized there's this little kid spitting at me. I'm like, Or
How
they're
did that
reaching.
not work its way into the horror stories?
I
That deserves some ghosts here.
Yeah. I nearly punted his head across the room. I've had people like reaching up to start turning the knobs on my pedal board, and it's not even like they're doing it on purpose. They just like, ooh, knobs, I'm going to start turning them. And so much of being a professional is just understanding that you have to leave space to manage all that mental stress, because it's going to be there. And those things can derail a show. It can cause you to hate every second of the show and get frustrated, or the release process and mess everything up, or the recording studio. A lot of stuff can go wrong in the studio. So much of it is just being able to recognize it's going to happen, and I got to be prepared to manage myself in those situations.
Yeah. And for anyone that we've terrified sufficiently today, a lot of these types of stories are things that are terrible in the moment, but you look back on and they kind of give meaning and shape to your overall efforts. Maybe less so with like horrible band drama or, missing the chance to promote your album or something, but particularly when it comes to live mishaps, even some sort of travel stress, it's awful in the moment, but you look back on it and it's like, hey, I was living an adventure.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It is an adventure. Yeah. And, any musician that's at a party, they've got the best stories. Because the average person's like, I drove to work, sat behind a computer, drove home, watched TV all night. That's not interesting. You can say you live an interesting life.
Well, occasionally you will find artists that that tour a lot that are like, oh, how was the tour? Oh, it was good. What'd you do? We went to a park every day and found a bench and read a lot of books, and then I played my show, and it's like, all right, okay, story's over.
Yeah. But see, they're treating it like a vacation or a hobby.
That's true.
That's not what you do when you're working. Take advantage of every opportunity.
Heck yeah. Well, this was an hour of horror stories, and I hope everyone has a good Halloween if they're going out and doing any trick-or-treating or costumery.
As Miles said, everything is an opportunity to learn. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm gonna have fun. Dance party in the garage. People are probably thinking like they probably don't know what I did to my garage during COVID, but it is a full-on dance club in there.
Yeah. You need to have gigs in there.
I've thought about it.
Let's see. Aaron's taking the kids out. Leah says happy Halloween. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Yeah, this is the first year my daughters are too old to trick-or-treat, so we normally trick-or-treat, then do a dance party, but now it's just the dance party.
Just the dance. We're doing the trick-or-treating in like a couple hours. What are we doing next week for music? You're at an event, aren't you?
I'm going to be at the Taxi Road Rally, so if anyone's going to be in LA at the Taxi Road Rally, definitely stop by and say hi. We're going to be giving away some great swag that's supposed to arrive at my house today. It's at the Westin near LAX, but you have to be a member of Taxi, which is a sync licensing company. Well, they connect artists with sync opportunities, but it's a great conference. It's very sync oriented, and a lot of heavy hitters speak at that conference. It's a really good one. So I'll be down there, but Chris, we may be able to work out to still join you for the live stream. We'll talk about that.
And if not, I'll just go live for a little bit. And if people have questions, we can do a Q&A. And if not, it'll last 4 minutes and I'll say goodbye. But
all right. Well, happy Halloween, everyone. Enjoy the day. Don't eat too much candy, and we'll see you next week.